Hi, welcome to It's Beyond Me podcast. I'm your host, Freddie T.
And Drift Nasty.
And today we're going to discuss public defenders.
And the joke of it that they are.
Yes, we are.
I'm pretty sure everybody knows by now that at least the majority of people anyway know that if you get a public defender 9 times out of 10, you're going to jail. You got to do some form of jail. You might not have to do the whole sentence of what your case would normally get you, but you're definitely going to have to do some form of time. You ain't going to get off with no public defender.
I mean, I learned the hard way. I'll tell anybody straight up. You take a public defender, the only thing they know is, we're going to sell this with a deal. And they're not getting you the best deal, even though they tell you they do. Mm-hmm. That they're working on the best deal. They work for you, even though the guy doesn't know your name half of the time.
You can't get him on the phone to discuss your case or anything.
You're lucky if he replies to your phone call or even replies to your family. And then on top of that, he always makes it seem like it's just so much of a hard work for him to just answer your questions. Like he's doing you a favor.
And I think that is also in part because they just don't have the time. If you actually get them on the phone and they're rushing to get you off because they have multiple cases, like they have hundreds of cases.
To me, it's just insulting because, these guys forget that it's your freedom they're playing with. I've been on the other end, the receiving end of the situation. And ever since that day, I said, you know what? I will beg the judge, just give me bond. Let me bond out and go and work to find an actual lawyer that'll fight my case because it ain't worth it.
Yeah, you're better off.
You could have a case that only carries 2 months, 3 months. Next minute, you're doing 3 years because you have a public defender. Because they don't really fight to get you the best deal.
They don't. I mean, and I think that it's a conflict of interest. Just the whole grounds of what a public defender is anyway, because they're hired by the state or the federal government, some form of government, and then they're given to you. So you're telling me that I have a state employee who's fighting the state for my best interest.
Man, if you wanna fight a case, bro, and you ain't got no money, bro, and they try to give you a public defender, you might as well just go ahead and turn yourself in. I ain't gonna lie. I feel like giving black people or anybody a public defender is basically just going against that like they clearly work for the state. They always getting people locked up. Think about it. The public defender is basically like a lawyer that you get for free, right? Which is paid for by the state. First of all, I'm not going to be on nobody's side who don't pay me. So therefore, the state pays for your public defender, which means that you're going to jail. They're not on your side. They're on the state side because you don't pay them. The state pays them, bro.
So this is the docket for the courtroom we're about to go into. It's well over 100 cases, and this is just one docket for one courtroom, and there's 15 other courtrooms in this building. 80% of these people are going to be represented by public defenders.
I just met with him at the jail on Friday, so I didn't have time to notice up a bond hearing for today.
Judge, I'd like to reset for disposition. I just need some more time to talk with him.
It's immediately obvious how overworked the public defenders are.
He's leaving.
I'm really busy, and so that's why I'm resetting things.
They're running around trying to meet their clients a few minutes before they even enter the courtroom.
And from what you've seen in that video, it's true. Actually, a lot of people will, for the first time, speak with their public defender at court. That was what I was talking about earlier, how you could barely get them on the phone. And a lot of times you won't get them on the phone, and then all of a sudden when you show up to court, your public defender will go and seek out multiple clients that they got, multiple defendants that are in the courtroom, and then pull y'all aside like they did in the video, and then that's your first time ever meeting your public defender. That's the first time they're putting a face to the name or hearing your voice, any of that, because they just don't have time. Fun fact, they have 25% less time to spend on your case than if you get if you hire a private attorney.
Sometimes they only get your case that morning, so they haven't had any time to actually go through it. And in some cases, they don't even know how you look, who you are, or what's going on in your case. So my question to everybody is, how can a person like that adequately represent me as the client? How am I getting a fair deal in this situation?
It's not fair, and you're not gonna. They don't spend adequate time. They don't spend enough time on it. roughly 90% of people who have a public defender end up convicted and have to do some form of jail time. You're 20% less likely to be convicted if you have a hired private attorney than if you have a public defender, which tells you already off the rip that if you have to settle for that, then the odds are already stacked against you.
And I'll be honest, everybody, these stats are being very, very sparing. We've experienced it our own selves where you go in there with a public defender and the public defender is telling you, oh man, you're going to get time for this. Oh man, you got this many points or this is this. And then all of a sudden you hire a private lawyer and next minute you know,
none of that.
Next minute you know, you're good. You're going home. You're not going back to the jail.
Because that just happened with my situation. They told me that I scored enough points to go to prison. Oh, well, I'm not going to be able to get off the hook without doing some kind of time. This is when I had the public defender. I was going to have to do some form of time in county, and that I scored prison, so they weren't going to let me walk. Then I get a private attorney or a private lawyer. I hired one, and then he did his thing, and then I end up with probation.
And I had told her, get a lawyer from the start, and she was looking at me like, why? I was like, I'm a convict. I've been there. I wouldn't have had no prison time on my bracket if I had gotten a lawyer like I had the first time. No, I was being dumb and being cheap. I was like, oh, I need the lawyer for something else. So you know what? I need that money for something else. You know, I'll just get a court appointed. They say these days court appointed are good. They're not as bad as everybody says.
Yeah, he's supposed to be facing like 15, 20 years. Gotta get him off, so that's a little good. Oh, shit. How you doing?
Shit, what's going on, son?
It's all good. What's your name again, buddy?
Aquavius.
Aquavius.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Gotta put that in there.
You're right.
No, I did it last night. Aquavius. I don't work for the police or anything. Everything's confidential. You can trust me, because I want to get you out of this, right?
Yeah.
Do you have the murder weapon?
I do.
You got it?
I got it.
All right. Then I work for you.
Yeah,
I'm on your side, right?
Yeah.
I'm on your side. Got it.
I should have listened to Gucci Man when he said you screwed if you got a public defender. He was right. Public defenders are the worst. No offense to anybody. That's just my opinion.
And to some people, I mean, a paid lawyer doesn't even come to mind. That is why I had a public defender to start with. Nobody really in my family that's ever had run-ins with the law had an actual paid attorney. They always have public defenders because obviously we're low-income people and things like that. And to us, it's like in our minds, we're like, oh, we're going to have to pay a whole bunch of money for a lawyer because they like to charge by the hour and things like that. But honestly, with that one that I had got the last time, it was I waited till like toward the end of my case to where he didn't have to work on it too long, and it wasn't that expensive at all. So.
And realistically, I don't think it would have dragged on as long as she had gotten them the first time.
Yeah. Because
honestly, to everybody, lawyers that you pay, if they see it's an easy case and they can get it over and done with, they will. They don't want to drag it on, because the longer you drag it on, the more of a chance you have an actual conviction being made. So they try and get it done as fast as possible. They only drag it on if it's something drastic. Like if it's a felony, they will try and drag it on until the state is like, you know what? We're wasting a little too much money on this case. Let's sit down and make a deal.
Yep.
That situation. But the truth of the matter is, I still advocate for having a paid private lawyer because of the fact that I feel that public defenders are overworked, underpaid, and at the same time, after watching a couple of these videos, I realized that even when they have private attorneys volunteering to be public defenders, what they do is they assign them so many clients to guarantee that he doesn't adequately represent you. Mm-hmm. That's why the DA is always cool, calm, and collected, because he knows there's no way in hell your public defender is going to actually do anything to get you off this crime.
Yeah, you're going to get a deal that's going to come with slightly lesser time, but you're still going to have to do some kind of time in jail or county, or jail or prison, whatever situation it is you're looking at. So he's not tripping at all because he gets what he wants. That's the thing with the public defender, is that they want to make it just to where it's like enough that you're gonna be okay with it, but the state wins?
Pretty much the system has failed people, because at the end of the day, it's stacked against the everyday man, stacked against the poor. But the rich will always get off their crimes. Back in the day, they had a situation in Texas where if you got a DUI in Texas, right, or if you, especially a DUI, you'd get what we call surcharges on your license. So for the next, I think it was like 3 years, you'd have to pay $3,500. Now, if you couldn't pay those, your license would get suspended. So a person you already in the red paying all these fines, and then you try and get your license, and then what they'll do is they'll suspend you again because of that. Now you can't get to work. Now you can't work to pay that fine. And now you're getting either arrested or whatever. So at the end of the day, it was all stacked against you. And it took one person one of the senators actually sat up and was like, wait a minute, this is stacked against the poor, because the rich are getting DUIs up their ass and they're still going. Hell, half of their cases are getting dismissed. And it got changed. But that's the whole issue. The whole issue is the system is always stacked against the everyday man. Out here where we live, they give you 10 days, even if you beat the case, they give you 10 days you have to petition to the DOT. So even though you beat the criminal part of a DUI, you might not even have your license. It'll still get suspended, which is stupid, because sometimes it's the legality of the actual DUI is what was questioned, and they had no legal right, or you didn't even really blow over, but they're still suspended because of the fact that
they just want to get money.
They just want to get money out of it.
It's all about money in the end, unfortunately, but it's all a big racket to get everybody's money. The more money you got, the easier it's going to be for you, and that's the way that it's always been.
Where the majority of prisoners we met were waiting for their public defenders, sometimes for months. Are you all being represented by public defenders?
Yes. Yeah.
Have any of you met with your public defenders yet?
I go to court tomorrow.
Okay, and you still haven't met your public defenders? You've been here 3 months?
Yeah.
And you haven't met your public defender yet?
Not once.
We've talked to you more than we've talked to our lawyers in a year.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Absolutely.
Yes.
The public defender's office is not even 2 minutes from here.
Yeah.
But we can't get them over here to communicate with them.
Yeah.
Because they're in court all day to the point that they can't even spend the time with the clients.
There's been a handful of times that I went to court and the public defender not even show up at all.
Yeah,
and then, if that happens, then they'll shoot off your court date 1-2 months down the road.
My court dates one's been 4 months apart, 3 months apart, 5 months apart.
How long have you been here in jail?
14 months.
14 months.
Yep.
And a lot of people might actually think like this is just like the exception, that this isn't like a common thing that happens all of the time, but it really does. As a matter of fact, my mom is still locked up right now. She transferred to another county, and she's been there coming up on a half a year now. And I have yet to get her attorney to call me, the public defender, have yet to get her to call me back on the phone.
Or even go and visit your
Or
mom.
go visit my mom. She hasn't given my mom a phone call. My mom had a court date for this month. That would have been the first time that my mom had got to speak. Oh, wait, no, she did. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had it. And then they rescheduled court for another 2 months from then. But when my mom went to court this month, that was the very first time that she'd ever seen or had a conversation with her public defender, and her being in jail now for almost half of a year. So it's not something that's like few and far in between. This is a pretty common thing.
This is the crisis that America is going through, because the problem that's there is you've got a whole bunch of cases, not enough lawyers. Well, they're lawyers, but there's not enough budget to pay the lawyers. And that's the problem. So now you've got certain lawyers with 25, 30, 40 cases. And you tell me that I'm going to have a fighting chance against the state, because the problem it is now, it kind of feels like you're not innocent until proven guilty. You are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. And that's pretty much what the state is doing these days, so that it doesn't have to work as hard. Their burden of proof is so low, and the bar has been set so low for the state, that it seems like you have to go well and beyond to just get out of situations now.
Yep.
The prisoners who can't afford a lawyer usually can't afford bail either. And as they wait indefinitely for their trials, the jailhouse is filling up.
This unit was built to house 42, and there's 67 in here today. So obviously we have to load up some of the cells with more than 2 people. And we have what we call boats, and they're just basically plastic type mattresses, and somebody has to sleep on the floor.
There's 4 people in my 2-man cell. There's 2 of us on the floor.
2 of you are in the boats? We saw one
No,
on the boats.
we're on the floor. There's too many. We can't fit any boats in there.
Oh, wow. They don't even have the boats that we saw because the boats wouldn't fit in here.
It's definitely not the Hilton, that's for sure.
In addition to what we have here, we also got 115 inmates housed in other counties outside the facility because we don't have the beds for them. The county will pay $1 million, probably slightly over $1 million this year in out-of-county housing costs.
You could probably get a lot of public defenders with $1 million.
Probably so.
And the longer that you sit in there, the more money they get paid. How the guy in this video just said, oh, well, he's got to pay $1 million, that the county pays $1 million for the inmates that they have housed out. Well, guess how much they get paid per head that's staying in there. So that $1 million really isn't anything. He's trying to make it seem like that's a lot of money, but they get a lot more for you sitting in there than that.
By him making that comment, he also posed the other guy made a good comment. He was like, well, that $1 million, if they had put that into the actual lawyers, they could have hired a whole bunch of lawyers and people would be out already.
Yeah.
People would be either locked up or on probation or whatever, and the system will be running faster. The problem is right now is we're spending too much money to house people and not enough money to process them.
80% of all criminal defendants need public defenders. Despite this, of the $265 billion we spend each year on our criminal justice system, we spend less than 2% of that on public defense. This leaves court-appointed lawyers like Brian Delville completely overwhelmed by their caseloads.
Good morning, Your Honor. Mr. McManus is here in custody behind me.
There's 25 cases that Brian's hearing.
Can I get just a little bit more time?
And you can see the stacks on Brian's desk right now, all the blue folders.
It's huge. Most of these files on my desk are from last Tuesday and Wednesday that I still have to process through.
So this is basically, we're looking at your caseload here a little bit.
Yeah, plus that, and that, and those, and in here.
Do you even know how many it is right now?
I think it's about 200 or so.
Making matters worse, the public defenders in this office make an average $12,000 less than the prosecutors in the same county, despite having to handle record caseloads.
I had mentioned to Judge Holden about kind of where our numbers were at, and everybody was somewhere between 400 to 600% of capacity. So that's where we're at with that. Also mentioned that today is Dan's last day, but it is Patty's first day. So welcome, Patty.
Come Monday, assuming nobody quits between now and then, it'll be the first time in 2016 we'll be fully staffed. So everybody keep your fingers crossed on that one.
You got a whole bunch of cases and only a handful of lawyers, and they're swimming. They're literally drowning in cases. I really feel it's done by strategy, because when you really look at it, the problem that's there is, the state, they'll be how many public attorneys? Like last time when we called, there were 4 in one office.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have assistants because they don't have a budget for that. So they have to try and look through the files and do what they can do, and pretty work with their client to try and see if they can get them off. But the DA, he's got an assistant, he's got a whole team behind him. So at the end of the day, they'll have 12 DAs?
Yeah, okay, we'll say that you've got 12 public defenders, and each public defender has 500 cases. So it's stacked in a way to where they're not going to be able to have the time to go over those cases properly. I think that if people really paid attention, that would give more proof to the fact that our laws have gotten completely out of hand. Why are so many people being locked up to where there's 500 people per attorney being assigned in the first place over petty crimes majority of the time? There does need to be reform with our laws. And I think that that's proof of that.
People also need to start banging that fact and actually, speaking to their representatives about the fact that, yes, we're supposed to have adequate counsel. Why aren't we getting adequate counsel? Why are we getting just mediocre counsel? And it's not because of the lawyers. It's not their fault. They just don't have enough time to look over the cases. As many cases that we saw these lawyers on this one video, these lawyers asking for more time because they hadn't had time to look at a case.
And that's how it is majority of the time. The first time that you go in with your public defender, maybe the first 2-3 times they ask for more time because they haven't been able to look over your case properly.
And the saddest part about it, it could be a petty crime and you end up in there for almost a year because of the fact that it's been just pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. Hell, during this last pandemic, there are a lot of people who ended up locked up and did more time than what their crime actually had. A lot of people ended up doing a year on a crime that only carried 6 months. But it's not like the state's gonna admit it. They're not gonna admit that. They're gonna try and get you to take a deal and then just say, oh yeah, we gave you a deal, oh you got time served, oh we did the best for you. But the truth of the matter is they really didn't. They did the minimum amount of work for you because of the fact that in some states and some cities, it's like they're working in cahoots with the actual DA.
Yeah, because they need so many convictions.
They need so many convictions.
They need so many deals.
And the way they look at it is it's the fastest way of them streamlining everything is if they can make some type of deal or something where there's the easy cases, they just, oh yeah, we'll just get them to take the maximum plea or whatever and we move it on. And that way we don't have to go to court.
Your average bear who's been around the block a time or two and wants to go to trial, well, then that's why the deals are there, is to discourage you from going to trial. And then if you do go to trial and God forbid you're found guilty at that trial, then they want to slam you with the maximum because you made them have to do their job. You made them have to work.
And then the sad part is these days, depending on where you go, not everybody can get a court appointed. It used to be, it didn't matter how much money you earned. You could ask for a court appointed if you wanted one. Now they ask you like, oh, you have to prove that you have these bills. You show them your bills and they still say you earn too much to have a court appointed. So I don't really understand. Like a person could be drowning in debt and they'll still say he makes too much to get a court appointed.
Because realistically, they're only going by your income. Yeah, it sounds good when you see the income, but you're not taking into consideration all the bills they have to pay all throughout the month and what they're left with.
They're not taking into context, like in my situation, my pretext pay wages looks real great, but after I get when you take out all the medical and all that and all that other stuff, I end up taking home a minuscule amount of money to the extent where I can't survive unless I do a whole bunch of overtime.
He makes good money, and I think I did a video and mentioned that too, how he gets paid better than how my dad got paid while we were growing up and everything, and still, even though we're not struggling badly, thinking about where we're going to get our next meal from type of thing, we still don't live freely. Like we don't spend money.
We don't live lavish, but we live a comfortable life. But at the same time, I look at it and sometimes I wonder to myself, like, man, I'm making the money that I used to wish that I would make. And I'm still struggling. In the back of my mind, it's not enough. And I know I'm not being greedy. It's just the way things are. But it's just the way the system is set up right now is that you're always going to keep on wondering if you got the right deal. And the problem that's there is when it comes to this situation with public defenders, you're getting the lowest, most raw deal there is. You are getting the crappy end of the stick. That's the truth of the matter.
Yeah, they do the bare minimum. It's just enough to where you feel like they did their job, they did an adequate job, and like I said earlier, it was little enough that the state is pleased because they still got over on you. That's what it is. It's them versus the little people. The poor people will always be at the bottom. This is a systemic problem. This isn't a race thing. This isn't a sex thing. This is being poor. Yeah. If you're poor, then you're looked at like scum. They don't care what happens to you.
The truth of the matter is, if you're blue collar, if you're the regular man on the street, the regular 9-to-5er, you are not getting the best end of the deal. The truth of the matter is, you will always, they will keep you in line using the system. And it's so sad because, you know, we work so hard to try and make a better life, but at the end of the day, sometimes it just seems like the system just pushes you back down.
And it does. It's not set up for you to make it. That's what a lot of y'all got to swallow. Everybody's like, oh, well, we're being held back. We're being held back. Yep, it's facts. We're being held back. It's not designed for you to get ahead. That's not an everybody's story. Most people don't get that fairy tale ending that we all really want. So it's just a bitter fact. It leaves a bitter taste in your mouth, but ain't nothing gonna change it until we reform some things and make some big changes. You can't even get people to pay attention to stuff like that long enough. Everybody's too worried about what's going on with celebrities and irrelevant things, what's going on with his gender and what pronoun you want to be called. You're distracted with that to the point to where you can't even focus on the big things that are going on right now, the things that you can actually change and that actually matter.
It's been nice talking to you guys. It's another episode of It's Beyond Me. I'm your host, Freddie T.
And it was your girl, Drift Nasty. And we look forward to hearing from you. Like, comment, subscribe.